Hi, I'm Sara Eichner, and like many of you listening to this, I work with data and design, as well as geographic information systems, or GIS. I've also spent much of my adult life as an artist before finding cartography and data visualization in 2015. I bring both of these identities to my role as an organizer of the annual Data Through Design exhibition in New York City, now in its fourth year. Data Through Design is held every year during New York City's Open Data Week. We showcase 8 to 10 projects created by artists and creative people of many disciplines who use open data in intriguing and novel ways. Our goal is to showcase tangible and multimedia expressions of data, to provide space for new perspectives and explorations of data's role in our society. We look for projects that push and blur the boundaries of data visualization to inspire and challenge. This year, however, it's the exhibition that is challenging us. In the past, before the pandemic, the Data Through Design exhibition has always been held concurrently with New York City's Open Data Week. The opening reception kicks off the week of events and brings together a large crowd from many walks of life. From the worlds of civic tech, data analytics, data viz, and art. The openings are excellent opportunities to mix with other data geeks for discussion, exchange of ideas, and stimulation. In past years, the show has revolved around themes like Not a Number, Questions for the City, and Digital Twin. Projects have transformed New York City data sets about life in the city, city trees, housing violations, squirrels in Central Park, and hate crimes into surprising physical forms that engage the audience through unexpected senses and in completely different ways than we're used to. And this is what some of those past opening events look like. Well, we won't be doing anything like that this year. Not only is a conventional gallery exhibition unsafe and challenging in a pandemic, our budget is much smaller, but the show must go on. And our group of volunteers has doubled and tripled their hours and is committed to putting together a truly meaningful exhibition in spite of these circumstances. In the parlance of big corporations, we're calling these challenges opportunities. Our work, while far from done, seems to be paying off, and we have an exciting group of projects that will be presented in a range of formats. These thoughtful and innovative ideas address the theme of ground truth from numerous points of view and also engage the audience in unique ways, out on the street, on the subway, through touch, through our ears, through participatory activities, and of course, because we can't avoid it, through our screens. Organizing this art exhibition has required a huge amount of the organizers' time. Everything became more complicated this year, from deciding on a relevant and timely theme, to organizing meetings with the team newly spread around the world, to our resources or sources for funding disappearing. We can't hold an in-person gallery exhibition, so what can we do? The focus shifted to alternatives and to forms that might get people away from their computers. This meant we put out a call for proposals that was full of conditionals. We might do this, we might do that. Please think about projects that can be shown outside. Not that we know where that outdoor space might be, or in a gallery, or on a screen. I'm actually amazed anyone submitted ideas of all the variables we had in the open call. Then, how to determine which of the proposal ideas might work in each of the potential formats we might present them. The proposal review meetings were very long. Why not just take the year off and wait until next year? Like I said, these problems are opportunities. Ground truth is our theme for 2021. Art often invites us to reset our perception and recalibrate our point of view, sort of like a ground truth marker might be used to calibrate satellite data. With art, this calibration is a disruption and a reset, almost like refreshing your screen or refreshing the way we see. There's a long history of artists invading professional realms to use the tools of those professions to question and subvert accepted perceptions and understandings. While cartography and big data have often been and are still used to surveil, colonize, capitalize, and to perpetuate hegemonies, artists engage in counter-use. Artists use cartography, GIS, and data to reframe or subvert those relationships between data and society, claiming these materials and languages in order to question and disrupt. Artists often come to data without expertise. This lack of expertise, coupled with curiosity, vision, naivete, obsession, or even arrogance, leads them to use these tools and languages in novel ways. They expand the languages, forms, and technologies of these professions. For instance, Joaquin Torres Garcia rotated South America in a gesture that puts cultural influences of indigenous people at the center of his art, creating a map that counters American imperialism. In the 1990s, Mark Lombardi tracked extensive information on index cards about international scandals and crime, which he then composed into complex diagrams and charts like this. Ad Reinhardt, as MoMA says, was one of the most relentless defenders of the purity of abstraction. But in addition to abstract painting, he created projects like this that combined cartooning and chart structures in its playful series, How to Look at Art. Agnes Dennis, an artist who has spent much of her career visualizing philosophy through sculpture, drawing, and earthworks, created a series of fantastic geospatial projection systems. In addition to this one, there's Earth as a hot dog, a pyramid, a donut, and others. Tony Craig, a British artist living in Germany, used scraps and found objects to create a composite map of Britain that considers the relationship of the parts to the whole. The Situationists, a group of artists in Paris, collaged maps putting geographic areas into new relationships on paper. They organized space according to impulse and psychology in an effort to remap the city from the perspective of someone on the street. And before them, the Bauhaus used inventive charts in many parts of their practice. This one is a diagram of the movements in Oskar Schlemmer's gesture dance. And Fluxus, a group of artists engaged in collective events called happenings, are shown in this map here. The artist Mieko Shiomi recorded where each member of her Fluxus group was, and in which direction each was facing at one point in time. This is not to say artists are solely responsible for the expansion of data visualization and cartography, but they play important roles in broadening the visibility and legitimacy of alternative forms or utilizations. They extend the possibilities of the work we do. The Data Through Design exhibition is meant to support and celebrate the potential of these transdisciplinary activities and explorations. In our search for projects that go beyond conventional data visualization, we learn a lot from the sources of inspiration the artists cite in their proposals. This is a good example of a found data visualization. It was identified by Snowaria Zhang, who is one of this year's participants. This isn't the project she is presenting, but something she shared in her proposal that she encountered in the East Wing of the National Gallery in Washington, D.C. The oils and hands that touch this delicately thin part of I.M. Pei's architecture leave a patina that is darkest where touched most frequently, and in a perfect gradient, fades in a normally distributed histogram. It's an illustration of not only the average heights of people visiting this site, but also the connection they are expressing to the site by touching it. I love this found data visualization because it combines direct records of people's interactions with a kind of poetic marking of visitors' connection to a place. This image of Oskar Schlemmer's Bauhaus dance, the Triadic Ballet from 1926, came with a proposal from a dancer and choreographer who doesn't typically work with data, but partners with someone who does. Just connecting dance to data visualization is exciting and opens up possibilities. Data Through Design artist Jen Ray will bring data to life with performers who will create charts with their bodies and with life-size isotype figures created by her collaborator, Jason Forrest. Let's take a look at some of the 2021 works in progress. This in progress project is by Jennifer Dalton called Feel My City Breaking and Everybody Shaking. It gets at ground truth through personal experience by collecting her data from her perspective on the ground within the larger pandemic. This is a year-long record of specific data points compared to daily observations from the public realm that she collected and recorded, such as the stock market, the weather, COVID case counts, unemployment rates, and the New York Times headlines, a record of sustained anxiety of last year. She manually logs these data points on time cards along with the tracking of her own activities like work, cooking, watching TV, as well as her moods and her health. These contrast individual and personal data with larger collective markers of this time. At first glance, her project seems to create a kind of personal check on the events of the larger world, tracking her experience as ground truth calibration or reference point for the larger data sets. But after talking to Jennifer, it seems like the other way around, and that the external public data sets serve as a kind of calibrating mechanism for her. They offer a reality check and a way to gauge time and to justify or validate a sense of optimism or doom, which is appropriate. Time has been like a soup, she said. She no longer feels a grasp on it. In early days of COVID, she was searching for a way to mark time or to structure it as one day bled into another, with days becoming weeks and now months. Like most of us at the start of the pandemic, she expected it and her project to last a few weeks. Now, how will it end? How will we know when it's over? Viewing this feels like looking at someone's journal. It's quite personal. I see what shows Jennifer has streamed through the pandemic, when she eats her meals, who she's talking to, etc. But the discipline of logging the same indicators every day turns these observations into data and adds structure to the soup of time that has accumulated since last March. Likewise, tracking the public data alongside it creates a unique data set and visualization that bridges the public and private, or bridges the collective and individual, the emotional and the clinical. From tracking a year of the collective versus individual anxiety and stress, we move to garbage. Renee Crowley's Wasted Potential encodes the materials and objects of her craft, not just with data, but with the subject of that data. Renee's project is made out of garbage, or rather it's actually compost, to visually encode weavings with information about food insecurity. Renee is the deputy director of the Lower East Side Ecology Center, which runs a huge compost program in New York City. And she uses some of that compost to dye the yarn she is weaving into a bar chart of meals served in New York City soup kitchens over the last year. What I love about this project, in addition to the tactile beauty of the materials, is the transformation of the potential of one of the waste streams in New York City, composted food, to a material that is used to signify the amount and increase of need in our city. She physically ties the potential of discarded edible food to the data representing need for food. The end result will be large, up to 8 feet long, woven textile panels that will create a bar chart representing the cumulative number of meals served through emergency food services in New York City over the last year. Each inch of the bar chart will represent about 10,000 meals served. The compost dye will be used to color the panels and to represent the potential of possibly edible food diverted to compost rather than to people's plates. New York City doesn't measure the exact proportion of food that gets composted that's still edible. This is one of the more tactile, physical manifestations of data we've exhibited. From the physical realm, we'll move to the oral or audible, data sonification. A project by Brian Fu called 2 Trains can be experienced by downloading audio tracks as you enter the subway. If you select the track that corresponds to where your journey starts, you'll hear a musical encoding of income data that corresponds to the census blocks you'll be traveling below. This is an extension of a project he's presented before that some of you might be familiar with. In this version, the soundtracks will last the full length of the train ride from one end of the line to the other, about 1 hour and 45 minutes in the case of the 2 Train. I know the data in this project well. I've looked at and made many maps about New York City, and I've seen the income disparity distributed across our geography many times and in a variety of visual forms. They've always been visual though, and as with most effective data visualizations, they're easy to understand and quick to digest. However, it's an intellectual understanding of the facts that doesn't generate deeper contemplation of the data. It's a detached experience. What is profound about the 2 Trains project is that our experience is the opposite. It's not fast. The data unfolds over time and space as you ride the train through the geography of the data. I am excited to experience this project on the actual subway, to see how the data sounds when it is extended over the time it takes to actually travel through or under it. In a conceptual tradition of John Cage's 4 minutes and 33 seconds, the composition is determined by the reality of those spaces rather than by aesthetic choices. It's not to say that Brian's project doesn't utilize aesthetics though. He takes inspiration and models the compositional ingredients of his project on the minimalist music of Steve Reich, because as Brian says, Reich's composition beautifully captures the throbbing vibrancy of New York and its citizens. You'll get a small taste of 2 Trains' musicality and playfulness at the end of this talk. There is much more play with data in other ground truth projects. One comes from Cindy Stockton Moore and her team. Shadow Tag looks at children and asks why they're left out of a lot of data collection. Combining data analysis, drawing, animation, 3D charts, and children's play, this team is creating a film. Both in the film and at a planned event in New York City, children are invited to interact with the drawings, to use the props to build 3D charts, and to invent games of them. The charts will represent data from the area where the event will take place, allowing for an interplay between the site and the subjects of those data sets. These charts will become physical objects in real space, and we're excited to have this opportunity to engage in local data outside and away from a computer. In addition to these 4 projects that I've described, 6 others will be presented in multiple formats from March 5th through March 14th. There will be more sonified data, activities inspired by fluxus, happenings of the past, and some that can be accessed online and taken out into the field. And others, like Jason Forrest and Jen Ray's Isotype, are performative and can be experienced in person on the streets of New York City, as well as online. And lastly, some will be displayed in storefront windows in New York City. None of this would happen without our team and 2 generous guest jurors who have put in a tremendous number of hours already this year. And we will be putting in many more in the next 2 months. The pandemic has challenged us to expand our thinking about this exhibition, to push harder to find work that reaches beyond the walls of a gallery and traditional exhibition formats. We've had to recalibrate our approach to engaging the audience, and we hope to take this approach forward into the post-pandemic world. While in our 4th year, we're at a stage where we are exploring big plans to grow, to continue to put on better and better exhibitions, and possibly to extend the project to other cities. If you have ideas or questions, and especially if you're interested in submitting a project in the future, please contact us and join our mailing list. We put out a call for proposals every fall. And of course, please come see the Ground Truth exhibition. We promise there will be wonderful things to see, hear, do, and explore. Come to our website to find out more. And now for a short sample of Brian Fu's 2 Trains. This version is the one he's presented before, and from which he'll be building his project that he'll present in Data Through Design this year.